Yes, you are. Thank you, John. As John said, my name is Cordero. First name Cordero, last name Holmes. I am Rio Salada College's student senator, and it's great to see everyone here to talk about a very important topic and to have a meaningful discussion. I'm here because I'm here to introduce, not just to only learn, but to also introduce our college president, who is not only just our college president, but a remarkable individual, Miss President Kate Smith.
Yay.
Ah, thank you, Mr. Holmes, Mayor Holmes, future President Holmes, and any other titles that we can come up with. So appreciate being here with all of you. Um, I want to start with a quote from poet Audre Lorde, and writer and feminist, who once said, "It is not difference which immobilizes us, but silence." And there are so many silences to be broken. And so tonight, as our PTK leaders, their advisors, John Bastian and Lily Davidoff, have brought all of us together with our very prominent governing board member, Mrs. Kathleen Wynne. I'd like to thank all of you for championing this effort and for breaking the silence surrounding human trafficking. um, as we honor this work, this long work. And again, Mrs. Wynne, we can't thank you and honor you enough for your commitment, your steadfast commitment, and the incredible work that you've been involved with. And we're excited to all hear more about it, and hear how we might become involved too. Um, but I do understand that this event tonight was a response to the prompt, "What evil in the world do you wish to solve?" Wow, PTK students, I just couldn't be more proud to be associated with you, to know you, to have the privilege of being a part of your journey. I just admire you and thank you for having the heart and the spirit and the will to be interested in taking on issues to better our world. I can't think of a higher calling in this world than to take on making it a better place and caring for those around us and caring about issues bigger than ourselves. And so, thank you. It is programs like this, where you demonstrate the compassion and the care necessary to speak out for those whose voices have too often been silenced. So, it is with passionate intention that we continue to form this accepting community and endorsing inclusion and mindfulness and empathy. So thank you for making this a wonderful night. Again, PTK couldn't be more proud of you. Lily and John, I always forget to give you a big applause at the beginning for all that you do. Everybody give a shout out to Lily and John too, because they do so much work to make this happen. So huge kudos and shout out. And then with that, I would like to hand it off. I'm very honored to hand it off to the one and only Ms. Shayla Pollard, who I think is going to make a few remarks and then introduce our very esteemed governing board member. So, Shayla, take it
Thank
away.
you.
Thank you, President Smith. Hi, everybody. I'm Shayla. I'm the co-officer for Honors in Action, and I'm also a member of the College Project. Real quick, I'd like to, first of all, thank you all for being here. This is an amazing turnout. I'm so excited. We have so many people. Um, Second of all, you all are muted. If you would like to convey something, convey it through the chat, please. Thank you very much. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce Miss Kathleen Wynne. Kathleen Wynne has devoted her life to protecting the vulnerable in our state. In 1986, she founded New Beginnings, a homeless shelter for women and children. In 2015, she founded Arizona Anti-Trafficking Network, and she served as the executive director of AZMN. Committed to resetting the culture for boys and men, Wynne turned her focus in 2017 to ending sexual exploitation and sex trafficking by 2025. Wynne serves as the director of Project 25, whose main project is VAST, Valley Against Sex Trafficking, which focuses on the sellers and networks that sell human trafficking. I'm going to put her full bio in the chat so that you guys can read it if you would like. And Take it away, Miss Wynn. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, just first of all, thank you for giving your time and your attention. This is a tough topic. And when you talk about evil and darkness, I, when I first got into this, I had no idea. And what I will say is, I didn't even know back in my 20s. You mentioned the homeless shelter that I found in Tucson. It's now 30 some years old. And at the time, there were probably victims there that were victims of trafficking, but it wasn't even on my radar. So whether I knew it or not, when that happened in it probably set a course for me because I've always had a heart for vulnerable women and children. And so I appreciate what you had to say there, Shayla. And I want to tell you that this month is, as you know, National Human Trafficking Awareness Month. And so much of what happens around this crime in this month, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of news. But I think it's important to know that as the focus and the attention goes away, this happens every day in our community. And so this fight isn't just this month. And then how many, you can maybe by a show of hands, how many people have heard that the Super Bowl is the worst place where human trafficking occurs, right? Well, the truth is, yeah, we've all heard that. And the truth is, though, it's not. Uh, the worst place is spring training. And so Arizona and Florida are two of the places where we have spring training. So in a few weeks here in Arizona, when spring training starts, we're going to be working on some operations, and that's really exciting. And so what I thought I would do tonight is give you a little bit of background about how did this happen? Like, why is this something that I do? And how did I get here, and what's happened and what's happening in the movement now, and where we've turned our focus to. There were some great questions that were posed in an email that Lily sent me, and I don't have access to that right now. So, and I'm seeing that I can't see the chat. So if you want to just say, hey, we've got this question, I'm happy to stop at any point and just answer questions. Um, I spent my original, when I came out of college, I was a television reporter, and I interviewed politicians and did crime beat and talked to police officers. And from that, I went into real estate, probably about 4 years out of college, and did real estate and development. And during that time is when I founded the homeless shelter. Fast forward to 27 years in that career, and actually helped people rebuild their credit and get their first home, and worked with a lot of different people. Uh, in about 2009, I started to take interest in politics, and I ended up working at the Arizona Attorney General's office for 4 years. So from 2010 to 2015, I was the community outreach director for the state of Arizona. It was a wonderful job. I got to uh, work with students and tell them how to avoid becoming uh, getting bullied, how to be safe with the internet crimes against children. I worked with seniors, I worked with veterans, did a lot of different work in the community so that people weren't becoming victims. And through that, about 3 months into my job, a woman showed up in my office. Her name was Linda Smith, and Linda Smith was a congresswoman out of Washington State. And she looked at me and she said, there are children being sold in your state right now for sex. And and this is back in 2010. And now if you say that, everyone knows that it's happening. But back then, um, I have 7 children, 5 girls, 2 boys, and they were 4 of them at that point were in college. And I'd seen some promiscuous behavior, I'd seen some drugs, I'd seen some things, but nothing about human trafficking. I was skeptical. Um, Within a week later, she was back with a lieutenant and a sergeant from Phoenix PD, and they were telling me, in fact, that we had children being trafficked. And I said, well, how is this happening? And they informed me that we had a law in Arizona. So the law in Arizona said that if you bought a 15, 16, or 17-year-old and you told the judge you didn't know, that it went from a felony to a misdemeanor. So what would people do? They would get arrested for having sex. And then they would go to court and their attorney would say, well, she looked older, Your Honor. My client thought she was a consenting adult. And and so um, that was a loophole that was in our law. And as a result, um, people that were selling people for sex were selling children. And the average age in Arizona in 2010 was 14. It has now gone down to 11, 12, 13. So the age continues to go younger and younger for people purchasing for sex. So uh, when that happened, I rushed up to the criminal division and I said, "We've got to stop this." And I politely was told to sit down and be quiet. That's the nice version of what they said. And I don't take that very well, and I went back to the officers and I said, "I need proof." So from January to June of the next year, they brought me cases of just children that were being trafficked, because when you get to an adult, there's different laws that come to effect. And from January to June that next year, we had 26 cases just in Phoenix. And armed with that, went back to the criminal division and we started to have a dialogue, and we started to work on changing that law. And that law was a House bill, HB 2454. And I will let you know that that law got changed right before we hosted the last Super Bowl. And that was exciting, and that was a huge accomplishment. And when that happened, Mrs. McCain, you all know Senator McCain's wife, she joined, and the governor signed the law, and I got to be there for that. And it was really, really exciting. And 6 months before the Super Bowl, we trained 5,000 officers. And we were doing a paradigm shift back then. So people used to think that these kids that were being trafficked were juvenile delinquents, were bad kids. They just didn't care. They were addicted to drugs. And what we had to do is take that mindset of who these kids were and shift it to that they were victims of a crime, that they weren't willingly participating in the crime, that they didn't want to be there, but that they were actually victims. And that wasn't an easy conversation to have. And it was one that took time, and we still even work on to this day. Um, the good news is that now, if you are caught with a 15, 16, or 17-year-old in Arizona, and there's no, you should have known, it's strict liability. And what that means is if you're caught, you will get a mandatory with one count 12 years in prison. So and I that may seem kind of harsh, but what you have to understand is children do not have the legal right in any state, but in Arizona, I'm going to take that back in a second. In 49 states, they do not have the legal right to consent to having sex until they are 18. California changed that last year. They lowered the age of consent to 14. Um, and so that's a problem. But in Arizona, we can't do that. So so as I left the Attorney General's office in 2015, and we had trained 5,000 officers, and we trained over 130,000 people in the state, churches, schools, kids on internet safety. When we were going into a school, we would set up a Facebook page, and we put a picture of a cute boy, and say we were moving to the community. And all these girls and boys would go on and like this person, and he would say he's moving there, and they would friend him. And then we would show them when we got there that it was really a 45-year-old guy. And kids inherently want to like, and they want to get into a relationship, they want to communicate. Social media is a wonderful, wonderful tool. I don't think we could survive COVID without it. um, but predators know where to find kids. They also are really wonderful at manipulation and grooming. So the issue that we have, particularly right now in today's environment, is that there's all these apps, and kids like to be. TikTok's a big one that people like to go on, and and so people like to make videos of themselves, and they like to be sexy, and they like to attract attention and get likes and all of that, and that we've created a culture for that. And we find that when that happens, people that are looking for um, that attention, predators will seek those people out. So the number one thing that I do, um, that's not the number one thing, but one of the most important things I do is I take calls from community members, um, and I help them either locate their child if their child's accepted a one-way ticket from somebody, or we look at the behaviors of the child where we see that they're going down a certain path if parents are paying attention. But we look to see how we can disrupt what we see are behavior patterns that will lead to someone being trafficked. And sometimes we get into it a little bit further down and they're already being trafficked. But I'm here to tell you that the um, selling of human beings is basically a rape for profit business. That somebody who is having to perform sex acts every night, um, they're not making that money. That money goes to the person that's handling them. Pimp is a word we use. Many of these people will tell you it's a boyfriend. However, the relationship is started, it's usually on a false pretense. And somebody who has 5 to 6 girls in their group can make anywhere from $1 million to $2 million a year tax free. So what we say is you can sell drugs, but they're gone. You can sell weapons or guns, they're gone. But you can sell a human being over and over and over again. And the damage that that does to that victim is never reversible. Now, can we get them out? Absolutely. Can we work on restoration? Yes. But a lot of people like to say that we rescue them. A lot of times they don't even know that they need to be rescued. So once someone gets into being sold, um, there's a whole series of things that happen. So the survivor thing is the piece that is the most outward facing and is the most damaging. But I want to take a step back and just tell you that there's 4 different areas that we work on. And one of them is legislative, so changing laws. So when we changed that law in Arizona, that was just one of the laws that we changed. One of the other things that we did is that we got victims the ability to get restitution from the people that were selling them, and also to penalize facilitators. So, who might be a facilitator? Um, the Uber driver who drives the girl from the bar to the hotel or drives the guy that's going to meet the girl. They could be a facilitator. Um, the worst facilitator that was mentioned earlier before we started the call was Backpage.com. And I don't know how many of you have know or heard about Backpage.com, but Backpage.com's owners lived here in Arizona. And I got a call when I was still at the Attorney General's office from an attorney. His name
Mrs. Wynn, you're frozen. Maybe I'm going to turn off my camera. I don't know if we want to try turning off our cameras to see if that helps. I think it's probably on your end, Mrs. Wynn. We're hoping we're hoping you unfreeze, or if you need to log out and log back in, if you're able to hear us. So it looks to me like she's probably going to she logged out and is going to try to log back in. Cordero, that's a really good question too that we can follow up on. It's an interesting question.
We'll be asking, Cordero and I will be monitoring the chat. I kind of forgot to say this at the beginning. We'll be monitoring the chat, and then when you put a question in the chat, we'll answer it. Or, well, I'm sorry, we'll present it to Mrs. Wynn.
Again, thank you all for being here this evening. Just to join us for this important topic. Anytime human beings are affected, it's going to be important. So, welcome back, Mrs. Wynn.
I am so sorry. I love the internet. So
Yeah.
I
We're
apologize. I'm
looking
back.
up back page. What is it? Back
Backpage dot
Yeah, that's what
backpage.com.
we were talking about when we lost you.
Okay, good. So what happened with that is that and this is part of my, it'll be in the slides that I sent to Lily, but there was a film called I Am Jane Doe. And that was the story about how we took down Backpage. And the US attorney ended up doing it um, because by the time the case got there, the Backpage tried to avoid prosecution, hiding under the platform law. So they were saying they were a platform and that they weren't participating in the sale, that they were just innocent, right? That they were just hosting these ads and that they had no idea that this was happening, or if they did, they weren't culpable. Well, how we got them, this is like, I love this story, is that they started, they'd always been doing it, but we got hold of emails. They had whistleblower employees that they were coaching the people that were placing the ads on how to avoid detection by law enforcement. So by doing that, by coaching the people to tell them how to say the ads so that they didn't get prosecuted, they pierced their own protection. And so therefore they couldn't hide behind, we're just a platform. You see it on Facebook, you see it on other platforms where they say, oh, we're not doing anything wrong. We didn't promote it. Um, but when they go from just being a platform and they edit and become a publisher, or they gave coaching on how to break the law, they became a facilitator, which we had put in our law. And because we'd put in our law in Arizona, we got them shut down. And that was April of 2018. So this year coming up will be 3 years. They were 80% of the world market of child sex trafficking and in 96 countries. So it wasn't just in Arizona, it wasn't just in this country, it was globally that they were contributing to this. Um, and that was a huge moral victory. Um, and as a result, I worked with International Rotary on that project, and also, uh, so I got a call as I was getting ready after we trained for the Super Bowl from former President Jimmy Carter's the Carter Center, and they said, "Would you help us put on a World Summit?" And I want you to know that up until then, I'd put on 0 World Summits. I had never done a World Summit. And I said yes. And then after I said yes and hung up, I was like, oh my gosh, what did I just commit to? But it was the best experience. And I got to work personally with former President Carter. I got to work with all these different amazing people, and we divided up this into 4 groups, and I've modeled what we do with Project 25 and BAST after this. But one group is legislative, which we've talked about the impact that laws and changing laws can have. One group is law enforcement. We couldn't do what we do without having police officers. They're our front line in this, and they see everything that's happening in the community. Survivors, people that have been victims that we found, and people that have gone through this that have gotten out and are helping other survivors. And then the business community, which includes education, churches, the general public, anybody, parents, grandparents, students, anybody that has a commitment to this and wants to be involved. And so uh, we produced the World Summit. We had 22 states and 14 countries. We did a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan, and a 10-year plan. And the name of the summit was 2025, Ending Sexual Exploitation by 2025, which had been what had been put on my heart to do. And I still remember that President Carter asked me if it was okay if they stole my idea, and I said absolutely. And he, it was so wonderful, and we had senators there, and CNN was there, and it was really a wonderful time. And after the summit concluded, we presented our 3-year plan, our 5-year plan, and 10-year plan to the UN. And uh, it's been the relationships I made there out of Atlanta, Georgia, have now and people were there from all over the world. I still continue to this day. I was telling Lily before the call, I'm flying to Florida next week to talk to University of Florida students on how to set up networks in their community. So there's so many different facets of this, and what I learned early on is I know over 100 survivors right now, and what really has struck me about this is that I each story is different, but they always believed something that was almost too good to be true and bought into a dream and ended up in a situation that was just beyond unthinkable things. And as someone who likes to solve problems, one of the things I looked at is how do we approach this as intelligent human beings to end this? How do we stop the continual cycle that where it's okay at a time such as this to sell human beings for sex to another human being, and someone's profiting off of that, and it's not the person that's being bought. So how do we disrupt that? How do we stop that? So instead of getting people after they've been victimized, how do we stop people from becoming victims? And I would tell you in 2017, that's where my focus shifted and really started working with law enforcement to provide resources. So I worked with a group called Operation Underground Railroad, and we got a mobile forensic lab donated to Mesa PD, and they're still using it to this day, and they use it all over the valley, and they share with Mesa shares with Gilbert and Chandler and Phoenix, and they do big operations, and it has technology. It looks like an RV on steroids with all these computers and stuff, and most of this crime is committed online now. um, you all are too young, but with a few exceptions, there when we were growing up, it used to be you'd go into the store and Playboy and Penthouse, they would all be wrapped in brown paper. We didn't have the internet. Um, but there was a law that caused that, and it's the Decency Act. And the Decency Act says that people of a certain age can't see that content. I don't know how many of you know, but your brain doesn't fully form till you're 25. And so certain content was not supposed to be available to people that were under 18. Um, then you have the internet, right? So anybody can see anything, and it's caused a hypersexualization in our society, and it has given people access to minors where they whether it's through video games or chats or online, and it's caused an access point where um, people will start to get in a conversation. Now, teenagers, having had 6 at the same time, they get mad and they get upset at you. That and if you're a good parent, you hope your kids are because it means you're putting in boundaries.
Mrs.
Oh,
Wynn, can you
Mrs.
hear us?
Wynn. Yeah, you're frozen again. We're hoping you come back. Yeah, looks like she'll try. Okay.
I want to thank Angela Kwan for not only being here, but she's sharing some resources. And it sounds like some of the people from your department are here. Angela, is that correct? Think anyway. You're back, Mrs. Wynn. I you're on mute though. You're on mute. You're still on mute, Mrs. Wynn. On the bottom left, on the bottom left, you should be able to unmute yourself.
So sorry. I am so sorry. I want you to know that in governing board meetings with WebEx, I have to rejoin the meeting 5 times. I am so sorry. Ah! Okay. So anyway, all I was saying is that with the survivors and with that, we're focusing on that. So one of the things that happened in the last few years is there's people, Navy SEALs, military officers that are getting out of the service and witness this around the world, and they have skills and they're using open source to track criminal enterprises. And in the last few years, we've identified criminal enterprises that are facilitating this. And I'm just here to tell you that uh, there's a network of massage parlors, not only in Arizona, but across the country. And uh, they are not just doing massage, they're performing sex acts. And the money that goes from there goes back to foreign entities. So there's foreign governments that fund gangs and cartels that run these operations. So other entities, I would are profiting off our perversion and depravity. So we are working currently to bring down these criminal enterprises. And we've identified them and we're working with law enforcement. And so it is a new way to fight this crime. Um, it has given me new hope. It is exciting. And we're going to do some of those operations coming in the next couple weeks. And through these operations, we find missing children. We did one in October from here, and we found 5 kids that were missing in Hawaii. And it's really using technology for good. There are people that you can show them 100 pictures of kids, and if they were to walk out in a crowd, when we can walk out in crowds again, they would find the kids in the crowd if they were there, or if they're trying to identify people, they um, they can take a picture and figure out where it is in the world, and we can and they can go backwards and locate people. And so we are working to bring those resources to our local law enforcement. Um, the other thing is continuing to change laws across the country, and a lot of laws got changed in the last few years. I will tell you that the needs are many. And depending on your interest in whatever you're studying, if you're studying, I see that there's some justice people. Our county attorney and our attorney general in the state do great work to prosecute. And if we do a sting operation, which we typically do, and I say we, but it's law enforcement, and they usually combine a couple departments. If we put an ad and say we're selling a child online, we invariably will get 30 to 40 people that'll come forth, even with 5 advance warnings saying you're buying a child, which is against the law. We will get people. And it never ceases to amaze me um, that you would think at this point, because we've heard about this, we know it's illegal, you know you can't do it, but we continue to have that. I it's a year ago. I had a mom who hadn't seen her daughter in 4 years. The daughter was a runaway. And I got a call from the Phoenix Dream Center, and they had found the daughter in a ditch. The pimp had hit this girl repeatedly in the head and left her for dead. And mom was going to be reunited with her daughter and flew out here. And we don't have places for family members, right? We don't, that's not, we take care of survivors, we take care of law enforcement. And so mom stayed here at our home. And um, when you talk about evil and darkness, um, and you see a mom who hasn't seen her child, and the first time she's seeing her child's clinging to life, and the daughter was a runaway, and she when people run away and kids run away, and we have a lot of kids in foster care that run away, and they're out on the street, the people that run the street know that they don't belong there, and they target them and they focus on them. And this girl had been in Texas and Louisiana, and people in this, they move them around so that they're not in one place. It makes it harder to trace them, but they don't have any of their own identity. They don't have their own driver's license. So uh, she was supposed to die, and miraculously this girl didn't, and she started to recover, and she gained consciousness, and she came out of her coma. And this mom was so tough, and every morning we'd get up at 7:30, and I'd take her, and she'd stay 12, 14, 16 hours at her daughter's bedside. And it got to the place where um, she still wasn't fully recovered, but she was walking and talking again. Well, she had no ID. So we had to get the daughter ID. So we had to work to get her some kind of ID card. She had no clothes. So we got donations for clothes. They had no suitcases. So we got donate suitcases, and Southwest Airlines donated the airfare so we could get them home. And then COVID happened. And these literally, they laughed. I don't know if you remember, there was a time last year when the airline shut down, but probably 3 days before everything got shut down. And I will tell you that I know that, like, in my commitment to this, I have 4 years left, but my hope and prayer this year is that we continue to shine light on this in a way um, to really get people to understand that if someone offers you a one-way ticket someplace and you don't really know who they are, accepting that ticket could be the most dangerous thing that you do. And I know I'm kind of coming to the end of my time, and all I wanted to just say to you all is that um, we can beat the evil that this is. It can come from education and awareness. I'm going to send you a 28-minute film that we're using to train young people. Um, and we have a training class. So if you see the film and you'd like to train some, whether it's parents, grandparents, or students, we have a curriculum, and the training doesn't take very long. It takes about an hour to be able to facilitate this. But we're offering this to you for free because we want to get the word out, and we want to let people know how this happens. The film isn't hokey, it's very subtle, it's how it occurs. Um, and it comes mostly from people wanting to be accepted. There were some questions early on before we started about Native Americans. We have over 3,000 missing Native American children right now um, in this country. Well, actually, I take it back. In the Western region, so Arizona is included in that. Arizona, Utah, it's actually more. There's over 300,000 children involved in trafficking across our nation, and it's a multi-billion-dollar a year industry. So the more that we make it acceptable through porn and other things, and I have to tell you, when I started on this, we weren't even allowed to mention pornography. Like, that was like saying a bad word. We have gotten smarter about how this happens, but the groomers use pornography to train um, kids. So we're seeing that that is an issue. There's addiction to porn. We're seeing that it creates dysfunctional relationships. It doesn't honor uh, women, young boy, anybody that's depicted in porn. And I will tell you that Pornhub makes more money than Amazon, Google, and all the sports teams put together. It's a $68 billion a year industry. And so if you wanted to binge watch, you know how we binge watch. If you wanted to binge watch Pornhub and you sat down, let's say this weekend, it would take you 784 years to watch all the porn that's been created. So do we need more porn? Probably not. Do we need to use our creative outlets in different ways? Yes. And so I um, I believe that we have an opportunity to really start to honor people in how we treat them, and go a different direction than we've been going. Um, and so I work with schools, and I work with curriculum, and we're looking to see how do we teach people to be self-confident, assertive, successful, and not use their body as a means to accomplish that, and that it's okay to have healthy relationships. And the final thing I'll say in resetting the culture for boys and men, 99% of our buyers are men. The fourth most dangerous job is to be in the military. The third most dangerous job is to be a police officer. The most dangerous job, if you will, in the world is to be a victim of human trafficking. It causes the most deaths, and the age of mortality is 34 years old. So I'd like that we don't kill off our humanity that way. And about 85% of our victims are women and 15% boys. But whether boys or girls, um, predators don't care what political party you are, they don't care about anything except profiting. So we need to stop that evil. And I'll take any questions you have. And thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight.
First of all, thank you so much for speaking. Those are some mind-blowing statistics, and it's awful that this is happening right around us. Like, this is crazy. Um, so our first question comes from Skay. She asks, Mrs. Wynn, what do you think the red flags we should look for on interactions like this? What about flags that signal that one of our friends or family members are being targeted?
So, stage bruising. So, if someone has bruises, like some are better, like healing, but then they get new ones. Tattoos that are new that a lot of people will get, the pimps will tattoo them, dollar signs, money, some kind of, name. The other thing is if they all of a sudden have nice new purses, their nails are getting done, the pimps tend to, or they start acting differently or dressing differently. You'll start to see a change. In younger people, you'll start to see them get disconnected. Um, it just depends on the age, but I have, part of what I'm sending you has red flags in it, and so you'll have that to refer to. There's a bunch of different things, but if someone's your friend and all of a sudden, they're acting just completely different or angry or sad, that, to an extreme, uh, ask. It's okay to ask, is what's going on, um, and if you don't feel like you've got the skill set, if something comes out, feel free to call in, a local law enforcement or social worker, whatever you think is the best thing, or tell a trusted adult, um, depending on, or someone that that understands this. I'm working with a mom right now whose daughter is selling her body parts on OnlyFans, 22-year-old. And it's just, I got that call this week, and the parents are beside themselves. And the person that recruited her is actually an army recruiter in another state. So he's not only recruiting people into the army, but he's recruiting girls into doing salacious films. So that's all been reported. But we get some really strange coaches, preachers, firemen. I mean, doctors. It's. I wish it was one type of person that bought people, because then we'd go get those people, but it's across humanity, and it's across all different professions. So it's not harmless, and it leaves lasting scars. So but I'll get that's part of the thing that Lily's going to get a whole, you'll get a whole information dump after this that you can refer back to. Was there another question, Shayla?
Yes, I'll ask the next question. This question right here comes from Bryce. Bryce wrote, he's heard that most predation of minors occurs within families. He asked, is this a case too with underage victims of sex trafficking, or is the main cause for, well, excuse me, somebody had the main cause for concern from strangers online?
So 37% of trafficking victims, so just under 40%, is family. The main reason for that typically is that family members will sell children or their children to get money for drugs. Of the kids in foster care, 90 some percent of them are there due to drugs. 92% it is. So drugs, we have a drug problem, and the drug problem is commingled with this problem and this issue. And so that is, it's something that we do see, that family members. It's only about 7% is abduction. We've all seen Taken, and it doesn't happen that way. It can, but that's a very remote. The other thing that about 30% is people groomed online, but they weren't abducted because they actually think this person is in a relationship with them. They actually believe that this person is someone who is a love interest. So, um, and I think that gets us to 67 too. Then there's other different ways that it happens. So, does that answer that question? Okay. Is there another?
Shelly, you can ask the next question.
TikTok is very dangerous. Um, and and they're collecting information, so the owners are it's like anything. You know how you could be thinking about buying a pair of boots, and then in your feed all you get is boots, and you didn't even go online to buy them yet. TikTok gathers your algorithms, and it does get a lot of information about you. The problem is once something's out on the internet, you can't get it back. So, um, if you're going for a job interview and someone does research on you and you've produced this whatever on yourself, it'll always be there. And for someone that wants to have a good career, producing those kinds of videos of yourself are not productive for a good business environment.
My next question is, do you think that teachers and people who often interact with students, like counselors and stuff, are they trained in warning signs? And if not, should they be?
They absolutely should be. And there was a time we trained all the school resource officers in Mesa. So Mesa, the whole school district, because they're the largest school district in the state. And we did some in Phoenix. We trained about 135,000 kids across the state. This has been about 7, 8 years ago. It needs to continue. It needs to be continued to be done. Um, but absolutely, and school counselors for sure, because whoever's relating to the kids, I will tell you that the janitor sometimes in the school has a better voice. They'll talk to kids, the cafeteria workers, anybody this is the scary thing about COVID and kids being at home, because we know a lot of abuse is going unreported. We know when kids show up in school, teachers and counselors are mandatory reporters. So if they see something, they need to report it, and if they have questions about something, so absolutely, I that's why we're offering this training. So if there's anybody that you think needs the training can be delivered. The film's a half hour, and the training can be delivered within 5 hours afterwards. And you could do it in a day, or you could do it over a couple weeks. Um, and it's really easy to do, and it makes a huge difference. And we've had a lot of people report cases as a result of it. So we're looking to expand that. Awareness is key. Plus, we're hosting the Super Bowl here again in 2023. So that'll be good for us from this point of view, because this is an issue that continues. Okay.
Absolutely, I agree. Since the shutdown 3 years ago of Backpage, you spoke of OnlyFans, and Skay talked about TikTok, in which you had addressed earlier. What other social mediums are being used for this kind of activity?
Oh my gosh, there's so many apps, and and, and kids, what I'll typically do is I have some girls that actually one girl that lived here for a while, she was a survivor, and I'll just text her and say, okay, what apps are people on? And she'll just send me a list. So I'll include that. It wasn't part of my presentation, but I'll include the current apps. But TikTok is a good one, because although on TikTok you can't put that content, TikTok will allow you to lead to another site or give you a link to something, and that's where it may not be right there. Facebook, and people will talk in code. Uh, young girl in town or new girl in town. Different. There's just code language. There's a whole subculture language with this. So yeah, catfish. Yes, catfish is one. Dating sites. Um, just even massage. There's so many different places that this is offered. There's a lot of there's a whole hookup culture, right? Where meaning just whatever. So I'm hoping with COVID and disease becoming prevalent. Um, Last August we did a thing on HIV. HIV is a huge killer of young people, and you can get vaccinated for that. And so before COVID, we were talking about that and how you can transmit disease. And I was thinking, if people are so health conscious, maybe that's how we go at this. I'm always looking at new ways, like how do we get people to understand the consequences of having multiple partners, random hookup, all of those things that don't lead to healthy um, relationships and also aren't good for your body, and you run the risk. Um, and unfortunately we have girls recruiting girls. I have a story. This is right before Backpage got shut down, the December before the April, and a girl was out with her friends and she was being sold, and she didn't want to do what the man she was sold to, and he slit her throat, and she was killed. And mom moved here and from Chicago, and she has a case still against Backpage. And you you can't undo that. And I was and mom showed me pictures, and you could see who she was, and she was a bright student in 15. And then you saw the light go out of her eyes, like you could actually see in the pictures I was looking at. And I said this to the mom, you can see where she, and she said no one ever looked at the pictures and saw that. And you but you could see she wasn't the same girl after she had been out doing this. And that's when, you had asked that question earlier. You can tell when someone is not connected anymore. A lot of times victims will be in their bodies physically, but they'll put themselves in the corner of the room, and we hear this a lot, where they'll disassociate from their bodies. Um, think about it. If you're having sex 7 to 10 times a night with different random partners, um, and you really don't want to be there, and you do that night after night after night, um, and that's your reality. At some point, you're just going to, when you get out, if you do get out, you're going to want to medicate and do that. So survivors don't make good witnesses. There's so many things that in there, and the healing process is lifelong. It's not, you never get over that. Rape victims who are only raped once, they have lifelong trauma. So to expect it to be different for someone um, who this is happening to, and whether or not they think that that guy was their boyfriend, sometimes we get people out and they still want to defend that person. If only I tried a little harder. It is, you know, it is domestic violence. And although victims of domestic violence may not be sex trafficked, 100% of sex trafficked victims are victims of domestic violence and all that goes with that. So we have to
Yeah.
realize that.
Yes.
So,
You and I spoke before, prior to this, and I told you that I grew up in an area that where a lot of this activity occurred. I grew up on Van Buren Road off of 19th Avenue, and typically what happened when I was younger was you had women who walked the streets. Is that something that still occurs today? And this is the last question before I hand it off to Miss Angela Kwan. Excuse
okay,
me.
sure. So um, it's mostly online. We even have what we call cam girls that are performing different sex acts on camera, and then you put money into their Vimeo account. We have people paying for this with Bitcoin. That's one of the things. Oh, so I'll answer this. It's all different places. It is out on the street, mostly in Vegas. It's out on the street. It's pretty because it's legal there. Um, One of the things we did at the attorney general's office is we people were sending money in all different places, and we set up something called track. It's the only attorney general's office in the country that has it, and we actually track transactions over $500. And with that, we've been able to identify these networks. So and they Vimeo, PayPal, Western Union, anybody where you transfer money, and they working with these intelligence officers, we've been able to take phone numbers and money that's being transferred, and that's how we've been able to identify these networks. So I share that only because typically these girls don't get to keep any of their money, and it's going to some larger criminal enterprise. And so it could look like it's out on the street, but there's usually a big operation behind it. Um, so we discovered the other day that there's a massage parlor in Mesa, Glendale, and Orlando, Florida, where I'm heading next week. That's all connected by analyzing the network. So it's more pervasive than we realize. And I hope that answers your question. But yes, it's out on the street, but mostly it's on phones and computers.
Okay, thank you. And like I said, Angela Kwan, who happens to be our faculty chair for criminal justice. Angela, did you want to say something?
Yes, thanks, Cordero, and of course, Dr. Davidoff and John and the rest of the PTK membership. This was a great session, and I want to thank the adjuncts that I invited from my department who are practitioners and who have dealt with human trafficking.
Thank
And
you.
I will say that in my career as in law enforcement, I used to see, we see prostitutes, we see sex workers and things like that. And we do our due diligence by ensuring that we maintain law and order. We address whether it be the pimp, the John, or the sex worker. And it wasn't until I went to a session hosted by ASU, and it was the Office of Sex Trafficking Intervention Research, STIR.
Dominic Sepowitz.
Yes.
Yes.
And where the paradigm shift was, these aren't criminals.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they are victims.
Thank you.
And so my mind was just totally blown. I shifted my perception of that, and so I want my adjuncts obviously to know that. I want my students to know that little girls do not grow up to say, I want to be a sex worker. I want to be a hooker. They don't do that. They are vulnerable. They fall into situations where they're either groomed. It could be another female sex worker. It could be the young men, or something, and they entice them with drugs. They entice them with money and things like that, make them feel
Food.
And they probably come from homes that are probably, yes, abusive, and this is their outlet. Anyways, I wanted to share, and I put it in the chat. I got permission from or Arizona Justice Educators Association. I know it's short notice. There's an event tomorrow. It's another virtual event, and it's going to be hosted by AGIA, and it's going to, let me look at the text here, be presented by Stacy Sutherland from Trust.
Yep.
And I'm sure you're aware of her.
I
and
am.
then also a member from Chandler PD. So I got permission to invite you all. If you want to copy the information and join us tomorrow, that'd be greatly appreciated.
And there's another event on the 31st called Night of Hope. It's the third annual, and we'll have community leaders and law enforcement and county attorney people there too. And I'll send that to Lily, and you can join that if you really haven't had enough by then. And so that'll be the last Sunday of the month. And Trust will be participating there also. So that's awesome. Thank you, Angela.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you again so much for coming and sharing with us. And thank you everybody for coming to listen to this. This is extremely important. Education about this is going to lead somewhere. So it's important. If we have additional questions, would it be okay if we emailed you through Dr. Davidoff?
You can email me directly into my Do Mail account. Just
Okay.
send me. That'll be great. It'd be great to get that instead of Groupon stuff that I get every day. So I would love to hear from you guys, and I would love to answer your questions. And there are no dumb questions, and this is morphing every day. So please know that if you have any questions or concerns, I'm here to help and just make the world a safer place. And I'll just leave you with it. I have 12 grandchildren, and 8 are girls and 4 are boys. And the oldest is 10. And so I have 4 more years left. And at the time when I started, 14 was the average age. The girls were getting groomed. So I feel that this is a calling, and I am committed that the world that they grow up in is safe. And I need as many people as want to come to this, as do all the people that are working on this. There's a lot of people So I'm grateful for the awareness that this creates, and I appreciate your listening, and I appreciate everything you're doing to get educated, and that you're part of the Maricopa Community College system. It's my honor to be with you guys tonight. And I'm very humbled. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wynn. This is a great session. I'd like to go ahead and lead the closing remarks to Dr. Greg Pereira, who is our college vice president. Greg?
Yay.
Thank you so much, Cordero. So, Ms. Wynn, thank you so much for your time this evening. I think I can speak on behalf of everyone and just extending our heartfelt gratitude for that time. There are really two takeaways I think for us to leave tonight with. One is that we've all been armed with knowledge of this atrocity taking place before us. If you didn't already know about it before, we all know about it now, and there's a responsibility we have as citizens in our community to put an end to it and to positively contribute to bringing an end to human trafficking. But the second takeaway we have is that today we heard from the embodiment of what one person can do. You know, if you heard Miss Wynn's story, she was not a police officer. She was not an attorney. She was not a judge. She was a mother who wasn't going to stand by as children were sold in her community. That's the power every single one of us has. And so I take that away tonight, and I encourage you to do the same thing, to believe in yourself and what you can accomplish, so that we all stand up in our community and make it a better place, and that we embody the change that we want to see in the world. So with that, we thank you so much for your time this evening. Have a wonderful night. Thank you again, Ms. Wynn.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Well, thank
Okay.
you very much.
You guys are the smart people, so get good grades. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You.
Bye.